I'm Lieutenant David Severo. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Waterbury Police Department. Since the missing person case of Ms. Janet Avello Alvarez began on November 13th, the main focus of the police department was locating and finding her. A lot of investigative efforts went into this. The police department has been in continual contact with the family, keeping them up to date on all the developments in this case. Last evening, as you are all well aware, these investigative efforts led our detectives to begin searching an extensive block of woods along Route 69 on Wolcott Road from the Waterbury city line into Wolcott, the town of Wolcott. At approximately 5:30 p.m. last night, a body of a deceased person was discovered in the wooded area just off Wolcott Road, approximately 1 mile into the town of Wolcott. This morning, the ME's office performed an autopsy on the deceased person. Sadly, the worst nightmares of the family and friends were confirmed. The deceased was positively identified as Ms. Janet Avello Alvarez. The family has been informed with this update, and as you can well imagine, they're devastated and very upset. The manner has been determined as by homicide. The cause was by neck compression. Mr. Alfredo Peguero Gomez has been identified as a suspect in the homicide of Ms. Janet Avello Alvarez. The detectives are working with the U.S. Marshal Service to locate Mr. Peguero Gomez as we speak now. The Waterbury Police have briefed State's Attorney Maureen Platt on the developments of this case, along with her staff and her investigators. To the family and friends of Ms. Avello Alvarez, the Waterbury Police Department will continue to investigate all leads into this homicide. The investigation will continue until all persons responsible are identified, located, arrested, and held accountable for their actions. The Waterbury Police Department would like to thank the public who helped our detectives tremendously. Our private business owners and our homeowners let the detectives look at endless amounts of surveillance video, which the detectives used to piece together and to narrow down the focus of the search for Mrs. Avello Alvarez. Any information the public has can still be provided to the Detective Bureau, 203-574-6941, or they can do it anonymously, the crime tip line, 203-755-1234, or they can email it to the tip line email setup, which is tip.avelloalvarez@wtby.org. If you have any questions.
Do you believe that Mr. Peguero Gomez has left the country at this point?
We're working with the U.S. Marshals to determine where he is, and that's going to cover that eventuality. And we know he left the state of Connecticut.
Do you think that he's being held by somebody else to hide?
Right now, the detectives are continue to investigate every lead. The investigation has turned from a missing person investigation to a homicide investigation, and that's going to be looked into.
What led you to that patch of woods?
That patch of the woods, again, to our public, again, thank you. You helped the detectives immensely. The detectives were tracking the vehicle, the Toyota Corolla of the suspect, and they pulled endless amounts of hours and gigabyte of video to look at, to try to track down the location and narrow it down to a particular location where the vehicle may have been, and that was the block along Wolcott Road, Route 69, from the city line into the town of Wolcott.
When was the vehicle seen there?
I don't have the particulars of that. I just know why the investigators focused and went to that extensive block of woods.
So you don't know if it was days or if this was early on in the missing persons case or later on in the missing persons case?
It would have been, that particular lead would have been exploited shortly before they started getting all the detectives and all the other personnel to work that block of woods.
So would that have been after you had already interviewed him at the apartment that they shared? After that, when it was shown in surveillance, according to police, that he left the house in his car, you believe it's sometime after that that's when the body would have been deposited there?
That's the possibility, but that's what the detectives are going to flesh out definitively. That block of woods was determined by the detectives doing a lot of legwork and a lot of hours, as that's what their job is, and that's where their energies were. That's where our focus was, to find her. And we found her by tracking him and where his whereabouts were in his vehicle.
Have you guys have any contact with maybe like the Dominican Republic Police and any federal like organization there that might know if he actually entered the country?
All those questions in regards to if he's outside the United States in another country, they're going to be investigated thoroughly, and with the assistance of the U.S. Marshals and our federal partners, then that'll be looked into and that information will be learned.
I know it's still pretty early in the investigation, but do you know of any motive? Was there any argument between the couple? I mean, can you speak to that? Have you gotten any information on that?
From co-workers and friends, the relationship between him and her was described as up and down, not a description of domestic violence. More or less, they seem to argue a lot. We don't have a history in the police department of any domestic investigations involving either the victim or the suspect.
So what point of the timeline do you believe she was killed? Was the ME
I didn't look at the report, and I don't have that information.
Does the video show him like taking her body out? Does it just show his car? What does the video show?
What the detectives used in regards to tracking down the video, because our main suspect, we knew what vehicle he had, we were tracking on where the vehicle was. And that particular section on Route 69, it's a large section on Route 69. They lined up on both sides of the road and started working through that mile-long process of woods. That's how narrow, that's as close that they could get to where the possibility was with time when they didn't know where the vehicle was, where she could have been left in that area.
So once they got to that area, how long did it take for them to find the body? Was the body buried? Was it covered? Was it right off the side of the road?
I'm not going to, divulge the particular crime scene descriptions and the evidence, but it took them several hours to find the body.
Do they believe she was dumped there, or was she killed elsewhere?
Well, the detectives are probably going to be able to delve into that in conjunction with the ME's report and the forensic analysis from the various locations where they've executed search warrants. So it's a little early to give you that information.
By neck compression, is that the same as strangulation? Is that something different?
Neck compression, from my understanding, is going to be, compression to the neck,
Do you guys have
cutting off the air.
Do you have a warrant charging the suspect with anything at this point? Or?
The detectives right now are working the investigation. All leads are going to be exploited, and they're going to go to the logical conclusion. So at this point, do we have an arrest warrant for him? No.
You missed what you just said about neck compression. That's strangulation, or?
Neck compression is probably self-evident. It's going to be cutting off the blood in or oxygen flow.
So it could be an object as well as.
Yes.
Were there any weapons or anything found in his car? Anything that would have?
I don't have information on what evidence was taken during the search warrants of his car. They executed a search warrant on his car and her car, which was found outside behind the bar, at the bar in the residence that they shared together. But I can't answer your question because I don't have the information.
Does the suspect have any criminal background history?
What's that, ma'am?
Does the suspect have any criminal background history at all you're aware of?
No.
You determined if he was Dominican or American?
My understanding, he's dual citizenship. He's naturalized U.S. citizen. Anything else? Good?